Okay, I'm going to keep this moving along. I'm next going to introduce my inspiration, Ken Salazar. Ken led the nation's efforts on conservation as the 50th U.S. Secretary of the Interior from 2009 to 2013. His record includes the creation of 10 national parks and 10 national wildlife refuges and hundreds of other conservation initiatives and projects in the U.S. He previously served as a U.S. Senator for Colorado, State Attorney General, and Executive Director of the Division of Natural Resources. And most importantly for me and for GOCO, Ken's visionary leadership 25 years ago led to the creation of Great Outdoors Colorado.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It is a wonderful gathering, and it is high time that we come here to celebrate Great Outdoors Colorado for what it has done, but under the very wonderful leadership of the greatest governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper, also celebrating and charting the course for the future. Let's give all of you and the governor a round of applause. John and I are like brothers. We go back a long ways. And I think I only have 15 minutes, so I won't regale you with too many stories. But he's been blessed by my mom at the ranch for so many times. In fact, Jim Pribble showed me a photograph about a week ago of John being blessed by my mom. But he's always thinking of me. So as I was walking in, he knows that I'm out trying to make a living. And so he decided to give me some money. So he gave me a coin, 25 cents. And it's the coin for the Great Sand Dunes National Park, which we all, many of you in this room, including the Nature Conservancy and so many others, helped create so many years ago. So thank you, John Hickenlooper, for helping us on the Great Sand Dunes National Park. Let me just say a quick word about Ken Terry, because I think what you see here is a great leader in the business community here in Denver and in Colorado and really across the nation and across the world in so many places. But when you look what he has done here as the leader of a private sector organization that has connected up in such an integrated way with the community of Colorado and who can speak so passionately about the civic greatness of this state and about what this state has done and why it was that he was attracted to move DeVita from San Francisco right here to Denver, Colorado. It says a lot about what this conversation is today. It also says a lot about what the conversation was in 1990. And that is that our quality of life here in Colorado really is a great attractant to great people and to great companies and to great things. And that was, in fact, Kent, one of the selling points as we campaigned around the state of Colorado for the passage of the constitutional amendment in 90 and 91. That if we were able to somehow communicate to the people of this great state that maintaining our quality of life would also support us in an economic resurgence for Colorado, that we had to vote yes on the Great Outdoors Colorado Constitutional Amendment. And so today, Ken Terry and DeVita, this building, the development that you see behind us with the restoration of the South Platte River, the 10.5 miles of the river as it flows through Denver, those are all manifestations of the kind of vision that Ken Terry brings here to the state of Colorado. I thought I would do a couple of things because as I was talking to Tim Mellinson and Lisa and others, it was important to kind of look back also as we take an opportunity to look forward today. So we hope that at the end of the day, we will be re-inspired to move on to Great Outdoors Colorado 2.0 or whatever it is that ultimately you decide to designate it. But as we do that, I think it's also important to take a look back and just try to remember what was going on back in 1990. So for me in 1990, I'd been chief legal counsel to the governor. I'd been appointed to be executive director of the Department of Natural Resources. And it was a very small group. It included a guy by the name of David Harrison, a great water lawyer from up in Boulder, Colorado, Sidney Macy, a tremendous leader with the Nature Conservancy, myself, Lori Matthews, who was the head of the Colorado Division of Outdoor Parks at the time. And we decided that to do something for the outdoors was very important. But what was it like at the time? Colorado was in an economic fog. You remember the 80s when we had unemployed geologists like John Hickenlooper because there were so few jobs. You remember communities like Pueblo, Colorado, where CF&I had closed its doors and there was a 20% unemployment rate. You remember Leadville with an unemployment rate of 24%. And so the mantra of Colorado and the then governor of the state, Governor Romer, was we needed to open the doors of Colorado to the entire world. We need to tell the people of the entire world that Colorado was open for business, that we were about economic growth, that our quality of life and the life of our citizens was dependent on having good paying jobs here in Colorado. And so Roy Romer didn't stop on that mantra. He went everywhere across the nation. He even went off to China before China was cool. And he spent 2 weeks traipsing around China, telling the Chinese that Colorado was a good place to invest. But that was 1990. Population then in our great state, just a little over 3 million, 3.2 million. Okay, that was 25 years ago, 3.2 million people. So a group of us that started trying to figure out where are we going and how do we get ahead of what ultimately will be economic growth and economic vitality of the state. Started asking ourselves, how do we create something that will be long-lasting, that will create the quality of life that attracts great companies? In those days, the U.S. West Research Facility, MCI, neither of those companies exist to name anymore. But how do we create that kind of environment here in Colorado? So we made the determination, after lots of polling and looking at different revenue sources, that what we needed to do was create an incentive to bring people together. And it was an incentive that would be a purse of money. And that purse of money would be called Great Outdoors Colorado. And it would bring together ranchers and farmers who didn't like environmentalists in those days. It would bring together urban people who liked the idea of teaching young people about the environment and the outdoors. It would bring together the chamber and the business community that cared a lot about job creation here in Colorado and growth. And so we took our campaign around the state. And I remember fondly those days that it was, in fact, you would think, yes, there were some of the land conservation organizations and their affiliates that helped us in terms of raising the money for a successful campaign. But it was the business community that in those days put up most of the money for the passage of Great Outdoors Colorado. It was companies then, as we knew, Public Service Company of Colorado, Mountain Bell of Colorado, others like that who essentially funded what was then an expensive campaign for us to win that election. And why did they do it? They did it because they recognized that the economic vitality of Colorado was important and it was dependent on us being able to maintain that quality of life. We did, in fact, have great support from the environmental community, the Sierra Club, the Environmental Defense Fund, and other organizations, many of which are represented here. But it became a place of convening. So what were the flashpoints? What were the flashpoints in that campaign? So I walked in, as the governor has done, and many of you here who have done, walking into editorial boards, and they ask you the questions, and you have the opposition on the other side. There were two that were consistent across the state, from the Grand Junction Sentinel, Rebecca Frank, to Pueblo Chieftain, to the Denver Post. And they would say, well, what about private property rights? We keep hearing from the Colorado Farm Bureau and the Colorado Cattlemen and so many others that this is an initiative that's going to come in from the government and it's going to take away your private property rights. Well, the answer to that is that there was magic in our formula. The magic in our formula is that we weren't taking away anybody's private property rights. We had incentives, we had money. And so what we were willing to do is to protect a way of life, including a ranching way of life, was to usher in a conservation effort for Great Outdoors Colorado. There were others who said that one of the things that we would create as a consequence of the passage of this initiative would be that capital construction would be devastated forever in the state of Colorado, and that there were other pressing needs, that we should put the money in education, that we should put the money in programs that are very worthy programs. But our little crew held together, and we said, no, those are all important programs, and they all ought to be supported in the appropriate way. But for us in Colorado, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are investing in making sure that this place is the most beautiful place in the world now and forever. And so we persevered, and we ended up winning that election by a margin of 60-40, which is in the political world, that was a landslide. So that was then. That was 1990. 25 years forward, 2015. We used to say, how are we going to shoehorn another couple million people into the state of Colorado? How's Colorado going to look when we go from 3.2 million people to 5.2 or 5.3 25 years hence? Well, the day has arrived. We're now at 5.3 million people. That same question ought to be on your minds today as you think about where we are and about the future. Where will we be 25 years from now, in the year 2040? Most of you are very young in this room, so most of you will be here. And you will have a Colorado in your hands that will have 8 million people. 8 million people. What will Colorado look like? What will that cohesiveness of bringing us together with our planet, what will it look like in the year 2040? Well, I would say that that is in your hands today. And the decisions that you make today will create that future. For me, when I look back now, and Lisa and Great Outdoors Colorado could tell you song and dance and detail of the legacy of the last 25 years, but it's a legacy that I'm very proud of. I'm proud that we have great leaders like Jim Spanstra and so many others who have been on the Great Outdoors Colorado board over all those years. But when you think about the fact that Colorado Springs and Denver will never be welded together as one community because Douglas County and the ranchers in that area and Great Outdoors Colorado and so many other people essentially put together the conservation programs for those ranch lands around the Greenland Ranch. So whenever you drive south of Castle Rock and you're going to Colorado Springs all the way to the county line, those beautiful vistas and those ranch lands are there not only for you to enjoy today, but they're also going to be there in 25 years and in 100 years. When one thinks about all the regions of the state, the 7 watersheds, the 64 counties, in every one of those places, there are projects like that. I will illustrate one which is important to me, that in every region of the state there are river restoration projects which have become really the model of the nation in terms of how we interact with our rivers. The Yampa River Legacy Project, which was spawned by Great Outdoors Colorado in the early 1990s, protects all of that Yampa River watershed all the way to the Utah border. And it was actually in the creation of the Yampa River Legacy Project that there was another partnership that was spawned, led by people, some of whom are here today, Jay Fetcher, who I saw earlier, in the creation of the Colorado Cattlemen's Land Trust. The Colorado Cattlemen's Land Trust. I remember when Ben Nyhorst Gamble, Scott McGinnis, people who were once in political, powerful office like John Hickenlooper, we were talking about water issues in the San Luis Valley and the Great Sand Dunes National Park. I remember having conversations down there with the agriculture community. Farmers and ranchers, if you were an environmentalist, you better not say you were in the San Luis Valley because you'd get ridden out of town pretty fast. And yet, because we worked on a conservation preservation effort that created the Great Sand Dunes National Park, but also protected the aquifer and the water supplies of the San Luis Valley and agriculture, actually became a great partnership where ranchers and farmers are working hand in hand with environmental organizations in the San Luis Valley. And that has happened time and time again throughout our state. So I will only say this, that for us, I think that our question today in 2015 is how do we as a squad of people, how do we as a population of Colorado 5 million strong, how do you as leaders who care so passionately about these issues, how do we make sure that Colorado grows in the right way? We will grow. We cannot seal off the borders of our state as other governors in other times had tried to do, because this is a special place, and we want people like Kent Theory and the Davida Village to come to Colorado. So our question is, we will grow. How will we grow in a way that protects Colorado and the beauty that our state is known for. So let me suggest a few things that I think might be ideas at a very broad level for us to look at. The first is I strongly believe that there ought to be, in our state, we ought to be known as the best in class in the entire world for the biking system of our state. There have been significant investments that have already been made in that effort. All you got to do is look at the Platte River or Clear Creek or Ralston Creek, bike trails that I use all the time because I love being next to rivers. There can be extended, and a statewide kind of map can in fact be put together to make us the place that when anybody ever thinks around the world, whether you're in Europe or whether you're in South America, where is the best place for us to go and enjoy the best recreational trails in the United States of America or in the entire world, they'll say it's the state of Colorado. Now, secondly, we ought to, in my view, also be thinking about how we protect special places that are disappearing, where you have intense pressure from urbanization. Now, development is good, but it's also a good thing when we're able to protect places like the Greenland Ranch. You know, I have traveled this state, and I have been in all its 64 counties, probably 20, 30 times in each one, no less. But I remember that drive to Greeley on Highway 85 and the drive north on I-25 to Fort Collins. And I remember even back in the 90s and early 2000s saying to the people in Weld County and Larimer County that one of the things that ought to happen is we ought to try to do a project, maybe along the St. Vrain River, in the same way that we were able to do the project in Douglas County, a Republican county that had taxed itself to create an open space revenue that then in partnerships with Great Outdoors Colorado and the landowners were able to preserve the Greenland Ranch, several 100,000 acres on either side of I-25. How could we do that to the north so that you don't have nonstop city between Fort Collins and Denver? You know, many of you have traveled many places around the world, as I have, all 50 states of this great nation. And I said back in the 1990s, something that has been affirmed to me time and time again, that I didn't want Colorado to become another Florida or California, where you can drive and it's nonstop city and one city melts right into another. That we ought to be able to keep Colorado from being nonstop city from the Trinidad and the New Mexico border to the border to Wyoming. That we ought to figure out a way, by being smart, how we protected Fountain Creek as it flows from Colorado Springs down into Pueblo and create a series of open spaces down in that area. Those are dreams which I still have. Those are dreams which are unfolding, frankly, in large part because of the great leadership that we have in this room and great leaders that we have had in these efforts. So number one, I think our trail system, that's a great opportunity. Number two, the preservation of high-value lands and opportunities, some along rivers, some along agricultural areas. The third is the smart protection of our federal lands. We have some wonderful leaders in this state, like Senator Michael Bennet, who led the way in the creation of the Chimney Rock National Monument, which I had a minor role in, but it was Michael's effort. There are so many other places like that that we have done a good job at. Browns Canyon and its designation on the Arkansas River. That was an incredible, tremendous action, which was again led by Senator Michael Bennet and by Senator Mark Udall to make sure that Browns Canyon and that very special place was protected. So how we deal with our federal lands, and I'll just say a quick footnote on that. There's a growing chorus from some people across the West that what we ought to do as a nation is sell off those public lands. To them, I say, you're headed in absolutely the wrong direction. I don't want Rocky Mountain National Park to be sold off. You know, it makes us a very different place, to borrow the line from Ken Burns and Dayton Duncan on America's National Parks. They titled the documentary on our national parks as America's Best Idea. America's Best Idea. And I remember having conversations with them as they were working on the documentary, and I would say, why is this America's best idea? Why not the light, electricity, lots of other things that have come out of this country? Why aren't they good ideas? Why didn't you just say a great idea? Why did you say it's the best idea? He said, this is Dayton Duncan and Ken Burns in my office saying, it is because our national parks are uniquely American and radically democratic. If these places were in other places, like in Europe, what would happen is that they would be owned by the noblemen and those of great wealth in those countries. But not here in America. Those places, they're your lands, they're my lands, they're everybody's lands, they're our children's lands. And so how we take care of those places is something that is very important, and we're fortunate in having great leaders like Michael Bennett and others who are working in that area. So that's federal lands. And then the last point that I just wanted to make today is about our youth. Yes, it's true that our young people are spending much more time in front of computers and television today more than they ever have before. So the days of being outdoors, whether it's on a bike or on a stream fishing or on horseback, back in the mountains, fewer and fewer people are doing that. And so one of the great initiatives that is underway here today, and with the support of people like David and Ken Thiry, is really to try to get our young people more connected up into the great outdoors. There are two young people here today. One is now a councilwoman by the name of Stacy Gilmore, and her husband, Scott Gilmore. Back in the early 1990s, as part of our Great Outdoors Colorado effort, we decided we'd create a small program called the Youth and Natural Resources. And what we do is we go into the minority communities and provide opportunities for young people to come and work in the outdoors. We'd pay them a stipend, small stipend, and we would send them up to Colorado State University for 3 or 4 days so they could learn about higher education. There are about 5,000 young people in Colorado that went through that program. Well, today, Scott is a leader of Environmental Learning for Kids, which is doing great things for young people here in the state of Colorado. And Stacy Gilmore was just elected a few days ago to be the newest member of City Council for the City and County of Denver. So I say to them, they are, to me, Exhibit A on how when you work with young people and you open up their eyes to great possibilities of the outdoors, great things will happen. So I want to just conclude by applauding Governor Hickenlooper for taking the leadership and putting this summit together as we plan for the future of this wonderful and great state that we all love, Colorado. Thank you.